My name is Joanna Thompson, and I'm the Community Outreach and Engagement Coordinator here at Center on Halsted, and I want to welcome you all to the Vigil for Pulse 1 year later. Hola, mi nombre es Joanna Thompson y yo soy el coordinador de alcance y participación de la comunidad aquí en el centro de Halsted. Bienvenidos a la vigilia de Pulse un año después. This evening we will have remarks from a few speakers, hear a musical performance, and conclude the evening with a candle lighting vigil and bell toll honoring each of the 49 lives taken at the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando, Florida on June 12, 2016. The world is our family here at Center on Halsted, so tonight we also pay our respects to those who died or are still missing after the recent bombing in Manchester, England. Our hearts and our prayers go out to the families who were affected by this tragedy. Before we begin tonight's program, I would also like to take a moment to thank our sponsors for this event. Slide action, there we go. So our gracious sponsors, we have the Chicago Commission on Human Relations, Pride Action Tank, the University of Central Florida, or UCF Alumni Chicago Chapter, Equality Illinois, the Youth Empowerment Performance Project, the Windy City Gay Chorus and the Windy City Treble Choir, who we'll be hearing from later, ALMA, the Association of Latinos, Latinas Motivating Action, Brave Space Alliance, ALTA, or the Alliance of Latinx Theater Artists, and Lakeview Presbyterian Church. We thank you so much for your time and your effort in making tonight possible. As a queer, half-Black, half-Latina female, the night of June 12, 2016 shook me to my core. On that night, my community, our community, was rocked by the massacre that claimed the lives of 49 people. Terror unfolded in the middle of Pride Month, on Latin Night, at Pulse nightclub, a popular gathering place for young LGBTQ people of color, most of whom were from the Latinx community. 90% of the 49 lives taken were Hispanic or of Hispanic descent, from Mexico, Colombia, the Dominican, and 23 individuals were Puerto Rican. From that night, shock and disbelief turned into anger and grief. At a moment when some sought to meet fear with fear and hate with hate, we saw a community pull together across their differences, united in a commitment to challenge bigotry and hatred. A deep resilience emerged from the survivors, loved ones of those who were taken, Orlando residents and community leaders, and LGBTQ people and allies across the country and across the world. People held vigils and fundraisers, including right here in Chicago at Center on Halsted, which some of you in the room may have attended. The vigils and fundraisers were meant to directly aid the families of those killed, the survivors, and display an unwavering commitment to combating hatred of all kinds. Ultimately, the Orlando community was uplifted by the outpouring of generosity as cities, towns, churches, and families stood with one another in the wake of the grief. Now, 1 year later, the LGBTQ community, our community, in Orlando and across the nation, continue to join together. Tonight, as we gather here on the 1 year mark of the Pulse nightclub shooting, we gather to honor them with action. Throughout the evening, we are asking you to use the hashtag Honor Them With Action on your social media platforms, which is a national campaign to commemorate the Pulse massacre. Please join me right now in pulling out your phones or any other mobile device that you may have to make a post on a social media platform you use, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and please write the following statement. I stand with @Center on Halsted in protecting our community. Hashtag honor them with action. And as you continue to post throughout the evening, please keep in mind the following. Avoid using the word anniversary when recognizing the 1 year mark since the Pulse massacre. So please use the word mark instead of anniversary. When referencing the 49 victims, please use the word taken or killed, not lost. Avoid using the name of the shooter if you happen to know the name. And please, emphasize actions that will address hate violence and give voice to the intersections of race, gender, and sexuality. Remember, hashtag Honor Them With Action is a reminder and a pledge to uproot hatred and bigotry of all kinds in order to make the world different, better, and more equal for us all. So now we will actually get into the program of our evening, and we have a number of speakers, a great performance, and again, that candle vigil and bell toll at the end. And first in our lineup for tonight, we have Mona Noriega, Chairman and Commissioner of the Chicago Commission on Human Relations, who will be reading an official statement on behalf of Mayor Rahm Emanuel and sharing some words herself. Mona.
So the mayor could not be here today. He did come last year. Dear friends, as mayor and on behalf of the city of Chicago, I take this moment to pause and remember the 49 lives stolen 1 year ago today, and support all of those impacted by the tragic events at Pulse nightclub in Orlando. There will never be any words any of us can say to make sense of the unimaginable atrocity the world witnessed on June 12, 2016, but there will always be more we can do to combat the stereotypes and prejudice that allows for a group of people to be stigmatized and targeted for violence. This massacre was an attack on our most fundamental values, values that we share as Chicagoans and as Americans. It was an attack on culture and community. It was an attack on love, on life, and our inherent liberties therein. So in honoring the lives and legacies of those taken, we are challenged to stand up against violence and speak out against hate. We know this was not just an attack on one city or on one venue. It was an attack on all of us. We know that many of the victims of this horrible massacre were mostly Puerto Rican and Latino. So today we stand in solidarity not just with the LGBT community, but also with the Latino community. Today and every day we must stand up for everyone who feels marginalized and let them know that they are a part of our Chicago family. Whether it is educating ourselves, facilitating dialogue with those around us, or volunteering with a local outreach effort, we can mark progress. It will always be incumbent upon us to ensure our relatives and neighbors and our children and our children's children live in a society where they can simply be who they are, for they must know they matter to the futures of Chicago, this nation, and the world. Let us find strength in the power and promise of a people during this Pride Month. Let us find comfort in the impact those 49 will continue to have in bolstering culture, community, and change. Because where there is hate, we bring love. Where there is intolerance, we show compassion. And where there is fear, we stand for hope. And we will press forward together for every victim and every survivor. Sincerely, Rahm Emanuel, Mayor. So just a brief second. Let me just switch my role now. Let me just say on my own behalf. So clearly the Pulse nightclub massacre was a hate crime. And clearly around the world, particularly in Puerto Rico, we all suffered the devastating pain and in some cases re-traumatization of being victimized or of surviving the AIDS crisis. But we have lived through this before. And I now know something that I didn't know before. And that is that the many communities I work with have come together in ways I had not experienced before. I have witnessed change. Therefore, I have hope. Our community, other communities, our overlapping communities are so much better about recognizing the totality of our identities and our interests. And there is a powerfulness in knowing that when I stand up, when I'm attacked, that I don't stand alone, that I don't have to internalize that I did something wrong, that I stand for a reason. I stand for you, I stand for me, I stand for all my brothers and sisters, and I will stand for what is right, and I will stand when I see injustice, and I ask that all of you to decide to take a stand. Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Mike Morales, University of Central Florida alumni and Chicago LGBTQ community member, who will be reflecting on the impact of the Pulse nightclub shooting within the Orlando community.
Like many of you, I spent the morning 1 year ago watching the horrible news as it unfolded on television. The fear, the anguish, and the anger was very hard to contain. With my parents living less than 2 miles away from Pulse, it struck very close to home. And I couldn't even call my friends and family that day because phone lines were busy. I sat helplessly watching as the aftermath of one of the most violent hate crimes in American history was unfolding on my television. And my experiences that morning were echoed 1,000 times across Orlando. So many of us that lived in that community either knew somebody who was directly affected or knew somebody that the tragedy touched. Among the victims, 2 of UCF's own were taken. Juan Guerrero and Christopher Drew Leinen fell victim to hate. And the Latin community, the community that I'm a part of, was especially affected as a night dedicated to their attendance became one of sorrow. And no matter where they came from or who they loved, 49 souls tragically passed away, and we've mourned their lives ever since. But that day, people all over Orlando stood up to hate, and our community showed the world that we would not give way to fear. In Orlando, following the shooting, the Central Florida Blood Center had people in line for hours. It was estimated that in some locations, there were over 600,000 people waiting in line. So many people had offered a part of themselves that many had to be turned away. And for those that couldn't donate blood, they were offering food and water and support to the people that were in line. And for the individuals that couldn't offer anything tangible that day, they contributed to the millions of dollars raised and supported the victims and their family through the One Pulse Foundation and the One Orlando charities. And I'm proud to say that during and after this terrible event, UCF played a role in the recovery. My fellow Knights were among the first responders offering support. And I'm proud to say that during and after this terrible, I'm proud to say that to this day, my fellow Knights continue to be pillars of the community through the counseling and support provided to the families and victims of this terrible tragedy. So many communities were affected that day. The LGBT community, the Latin community, the students and faculty of UCF, the city of Orlando, and everyone who chooses love instead of hate. And these people showed their true strength in the days and months that followed. And we gather here today to reaffirm our commitment to love and our absolute rejection of hatred. Thank you.
Next, we will hear from David Gauna and Carlos Farroso, members of ALMA, Association of Latinos, Latinas Motivating Action Youth Board, who will be sharing some words on how Pulse has affected the Latinx community.
Good evening. I was supposed to share this speech with somebody, but they weren't able to make it. But they certainly did help me put together this speech. So I still want to continue moving forward. My name is David Gauna, and I am a Youth Advisory Board member for ALMA, Association of Latinos, Latinas Motivating Action. Thank you for being here today. While we are excited to share this space with members of our community, we are saddened by the reason why we are here. Briefly, ALMA is an LGBTQ Latino, Latina education and advocacy organization. Since its inception in 1989, ALMA has existed to provide a safe space for members of a double marginalized community: lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and questioning Latinos, Latinas. What happened in Orlando was a hate crime that targeted our community. Unfortunately, not an isolated hate crime. We cannot ignore the reality that most victims of homophobic and transphobic hate crimes are LGBTQ people of color. Over 60% of all the survivors of homophobic and transphobic hate crimes were people of color, with Latina and Latinos at 28%, and further, 17% of survivors of anti-LGBTQ hate crimes are undocumented. This does not take into account the insidious rate of murdered transgender women of color, which has skyrocketed in the past 2 years, most of them Black and Latina. At Pulse nightclub, 90% of the 49 victims were Latino, Mexican, Colombian, Dominican, and 23 were Puerto Rican. I was going on my 3rd year of coming out and celebrating Pride. In fact, it was Boys Town, just like many others who come out, while living here in Chicago, where I explored my sexuality the most. It was the only place I felt comfortable and safe to do so. It was Latin night I loved the most in gay clubs because that is where I made the most connections. The image in my mind that someone like me getting dressed to step out, the image that a couple of drinks, someone like you finally chosen to loosen up and to get on the dance floor. The image that someone like me seeing someone they like on the dance floor and spending most of the night building the courage to ask them out to dance with you, and firecrackers going off when they agree to. The image of someone like me dancing with another guy, feeling the vibes of the night, laughing and wondering when you can slip in a kiss, only to remind yourself you still need to know his name. The idea of feeling happy because something about in that moment feels good, feels right, only to be taken away by the sounds of gunshots. The image of someone like myself in a space that once upon a time might have been the safest place you can be, now shattered with blood from hate. The knowing that that you too, in that bathroom of Pulse nightclub, hiding, would have texted your mother, "I love you," say his name, Eddie Justice, the Pulse nightclub victim who made me cry the most. The images, connections, and knowing that I would react similar left me in fear. Around the time of the shooting, I had already built up a network in Chicago LGBTQ community through ALMA, and what I witnessed was so much pain and confusion. But what I also saw was a vast amount of support, especially within the LGBTQ Latinx community. I reflect on how our community has come so far, but also how much more that needs to be done. I remember wondering if anyone was even going to show up to Pride, if fear would take over, and questioning if I should walk Pride 2016. I think about Pride and what positive images come to mind when I hear the word. But pride can also exist even in the most troubling times. Pride is owning what you are, who you are, and where you come from, no matter what the circumstances. So we marched. ALMA, along with other community leaders and organizations, marched holding the signs of 49 victims taken away too soon. Walking with my peers, my mentors in ALMA and community, and seeing thousands come out to celebrate, once again, I felt safe because I knew I was not alone. Let's remember those who were murdered at Pulse by living our true lives. I will not go back to a life of fear. We need to challenge homophobia and transphobia. We need to intervene when we see bullying. We need to stand in solidarity with all marginalized communities, marginalized people, refugees, Muslims, Jewish, African Americans, indigenous people. In Spanish, alma means spirit. And today, our movement is guided by 49 spirits who are dancing, who are voguing, and who will continue to live through us. Thank you.
A big thank you to our speakers for sharing words of impact and resilience, true resilience, felt by our community in the wake of the Pulse nightclub shooting. And so now, please join me in welcoming the Windy City Gay Chorus and the Windy City Treble Choir, who will be performing a song from their upcoming show, Pulse.
You with the sad eyes, don't be discouraged, oh I realize it's hard to take courage in a world full of people, and you can lose sight of it all, and the darkness there inside you makes you feel so small. But I see your true colors shining through. I see your true colors, and that's why I love you. So don't be afraid to let them show your true colors. True colors are beautiful, like a rainbow. Show me a smile then, and don't be unhappy, can't remember when. I saw you laughing. If this world makes you crazy, take it all you can bear.
We have now reached the Vigil and bell toll portion of the evening. We will have Pastor Joy Douglas Strome from Lakeview Presbyterian Church offer a blessing of remembrance and gratitude. We will then have a moment of silence as we read aloud each of the 49 names and perform a bell toll after each name. Readings of the names will be followed by a closing word of prayer from Pastor Joy.
Offer this blessing this evening, and when you hear the words with one voice, I'd ask that you respond with the words, honor them with action, and let love win. Let's try that with one voice. Honor them with action, and let love win. Let us now come together in reverence for the lives tragically killed 1 year ago. As we light candles, hear the names, remember the horror of that day, as we feel fear renewed and sadness sweep over us all again, let us come together affirming with one voice, honor them with action, and let love win. As we remember the families torn apart in grief, lovers ripped apart in a split second, as we honor the lives of all 49 beautiful human beings, as we mourn the loss of contributions they would have made to the world, let us come together affirming with one voice, honor them with action, and let love win. As we pick up the pieces to move ahead, as we remember each name gone but not forgotten, as we unite in our conviction that hate has no place in the world, as we promise one another not to stop until hate stops, let us come together affirming with one voice, honor them with action, and let love win. As we gain strength and unity, as our voices rise in power and justice, as we commit to working against all forms of bigotry, as we commit to peace as our goal for all, let us come together affirming with one voice, honor them with action, and let love win.
For those who are helping with the candle lighting, can you please come to the stage? And now we will read aloud each name and perform a bell toll after each name. Stanley Almodovar III, 23 years old. Amanda Alvear, 25 years old. Oscar A. Arquena Montero, 26 years old. Rodolfo Ayala, 33 years old. Antonio Devon Brown, 29 years old. Daryl Roman Burt II, 29 years old. Angel L. Candelario Padro, 28 years old. Juan Chavez Martinez, 25 years old. Luis Daniel Conde, 39 years old. Corey James Connell, 21 years old. Tevin Eugene Crosby, 25 years old. Dianca Deidre Drayton, 32 years old. Simon Adrian Carrillo Fernandez, 31 years old. Leroy Valentin Fernandez, 25 years old. Mercedes Marisol Flores, 26 years old. Peter O. Gonzalez Cruz, 22 years old. Juan Ramon Guerrero, 22 years old. Paul Terrell Henry, 41 years old. Frank Hernandez, 27 years old. Miguel Angel Honorato, 30 years old. Javier Jorge Reyes, 40 years old. Jason Benjamin Josephat, 19 years old. Eddie Hamodro Justice, 30 years old. Anthony Luis Loriano Disla, 25 years old. Christopher Drew Andrew Leonin, 32 years old. Alejandro Barrios Martinez, 21 years old. Brenda Lee Marquez McCool, 49 years old. Gilberto Ramon Silva Menendez, 25 years old. KJ Morris, 37 years old. Acura Monet Murray, 18 years old. Luis Omar Ocasio Capo, 20 years old. Geraldo A. Ortiz Jimenez, 25 years old. Eric Ivan Ortiz Rivera, 36 years old. Joel Rayon Paniagua, 32 years old. John Carlos Menendez Perez, 35 years old. Enrique L. Rios Jr., 25 years old. John C. Nieves Rodriguez, 27 years old. Xavier Emmanuel Serrano Rosado, 35 years old. Christopher Joseph Sanfeliz, 24 years old. Ilmeri Rodriguez Solivan, 24 years old. Edward Sotomayor Jr., 34 years old. Shane Evan Tomlinson, 33 years old. Martin Benitez Torres, 33 years old. Jonathan Antonio Camuy Vega, 24 years old. Juan P. Rivera Velázquez, 37 years old. Luis S. Vielma, 22 years old. Frankie Jimmy de Jesus Velázquez, 50 years old. Luis Daniel Lestat Wilson Leon, 37 years old. Gerald Jerry Arthur Wright, 31 years old. And now we will light a candle for each of the names.
Let us pray. Our candles up. O God, whom we know by many names, blow through this troubled world of ours and press our best selves to rise to the top. Help us find the conviction, the courage, and the commitment to work tirelessly to till new ground, ground that grows not oppression but justice, ground that grows not fear but courage, ground that grows not apathy but commitment, ground that grows not hate but love. We ask your special blessing on all those who gather this evening around this country and around the world, and bring us together here in this moment at the Center on Halsted of community solidarity. Help us to experience one moment of peace. And God's people say together, amen.
Or if you want to keep, I would love to keep the candles lit forever. But you can go ahead and blow them out if you want to. And thank you for those of you who are holding a candle right now. Thank you. So we've reached the end of our program for this evening, and I want to thank you for attending tonight's Pulse 1 Year Later Vigil. All of us here at Center on Halsted hope that this evening has helped you to continue to heal from last year's tragedy, as well as instill further resilience in moving forward from this horrendous act of violence upon our community. As we move forward from this evening and further into the fun of Pride Month, please remember to continue to use the hashtag #HonorThemWithAction so that we may continue to honor the 49 lives taken at Pulse last year. And remember, the action that we honor these lives with can be big or small. Get involved in the community by volunteering at events. Donate your time, donate your money to organizations that are working for our community, or simply lend a shoulder to somebody who needs one to lean on. Be safe as you leave here, and thank you again for attending the Pulse 1 Year Later Vigil at Center on Halsted.